It's pretty cool. Like it's like sleep's the ultimate performance enhancing drug. Like
Yeah.
you got all these lines. And yeah, I mean, and it's funny because like my scores actually degraded in the last 12 months and my weights went up and my sleeps went down.
Yeah.
And it happens to me,
There's
regularly.
correlation here.
There is like when I'm building startups and doing like early stage stuff, I always end it in this mode where like the
But, like,
sleep,
once you were acquired into Microsoft and Instacart, the sleep scores went up, like, weight
you
went
just find
down.
balance. I mean, they're just it's a more balanced org. You have
Yeah.
more people around. Like you're not
You can
carrying as many
delegate. You're not
things. You're,
you're not chief cook
yeah.
and bottle washer and everything.
Hey, welcome to Founder Mode.
Oh, hey, what's up, Kevin?
So we're going to talk about three things. So one, we're going to talk about the founder sleep crisis because you didn't sleep last night, and I slept less. And then the first 90 days, like when you take over like a company or a project, like what do you do?
Yeah,
And
you're
then the
living that
third
right
one,
now, right?
yeah, I was working
Yeah.
on some of that. And then the third one was like the saying no muscle. Like how do you kind of prioritize? To me, I really like the third one. So, but let's jump into it.
Well, so we're big on the 8 sleeps. That's where we get our text messages. This is nasty. Look at that. 36, 3 hours of sleep.
But this
64
was
solid.
interesting because
Yeah, so yeah,
earlier it was 58, and then I went back to sleep for an hour.
that's incredible. I can't do that. So that's like the first thing for me. When I wake up post like 1 a.m., no matter when I went to sleep, my mind starts chunking on stuff. And I'm just like, well, I got to do these 6 things on my list. So I just better get into it.
So I don't count cheat. So I do wear a sleep mask because I think that helps get back to
I
sleep.
started wearing one this year. It's game changer.
Yeah, but I think and I'll put the link in the show notes to the one I have. Like I've gotten three different ones. There's the
Was this like an
Alaskan Bear.
Amazon cheap one or is it like a nice one?
So the Alaskan Bear was my Amazon cheap one, and I bought many of those. I think they're like $9 or $14. I think they changed the price once I started giving more people the link. It used to be $9. I think they're 14. And like I said, even on a
Yeah.
long flight, you just pop it in, and you're like, even if you're
Yeah.
not in the lie flat seats, you got to sit up. And I took a late flight yesterday, and I just popped it on and slept for a couple hours, and it's great.
The other thing that's been interesting for me with sleep is I feel like, I mean, post kids, most people, like you have young kids, you go to sleep earlier, you get up earlier, they wake up early, whatever. But you and I started doing this podcast last year, and you like just jammed into my brain. Like I go to bed at 8, I wake up at like 5. Like I'm like, or, between 4 and 5. Like
Yeah,
you're the sleep routine, and like
yeah.
I've been really consistent. Last night notwithstanding, going to bed super early. And when I tell people I wake up consistently at like 4:30 in the morning and I go to the gym and I have like 2 hours before anybody else is
Right.
awake,
Yeah.
it's like it's an unlock for everything, not just like running companies, but just life.
It's pretty cool. Like it's like sleep's the ultimate performance enhancing drug. Like
Yeah.
you got all these lines. And yeah, I mean, and it's funny because like my scores actually degraded in the last 12 months and my weights went up and my sleeps went down.
Yeah.
And it happens to me,
There's
regularly.
correlation here.
There is like when I'm building startups and doing like early stage stuff, I always end it in this mode where like the
But like
sleep,
once you were acquired into Microsoft and Instacart, the sleep scores went up, the like weight
you
went
just find
down.
balance. I mean, they're just it's a more balanced org. You have
Yeah.
more people around. Like you're not
You can
carrying as many
delegate. You're not
things.
you're not chief cook
Yeah.
and bottle washer and everything.
Exactly. And so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think the thing I would love to unlock, and it's funny because like we literally started this first episode of this show, going back
Yeah.
to like the original was talking about like sleep and the balance, household culture and stuff. And so it still's like a real challenge, right? Like to try to like force the sleep thing and get
Totally.
on it. And topic two was taking over like a new project or a company.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? Like,
Yeah.
how do you sort of get your bearing?
Yeah. You have way more experience here than me. My context on this, and then I think you should kind of talk through like being acquired into companies and like your recent journey of taking over a company that you were involved in early days and then haven't been involved with for many years. But on my side, my role is like this third party consultant dropping into a company. So like I've been a fractional CMO more times than I can count on my two hands. And that's an interesting role. And what I've found with consulting, at least, especially consulting into tech startups and like high growth tech companies, is like if you hire expensive consultants, you give them way more latitude and benefit of the doubt than an FTE. It's weird. Like if somebody's like, it's the McKinsey effect or whatever, and I'm not McKinsey and my team's not, but like
Right.
trying to be, right? Want to be as good as that and premium. But like
Yeah.
ultimately, people are like, well, you've done this before, you know what you're doing. We hired you for a reason. We're spending all this money. We should probably listen to you. We should probably do what you're telling us to do. And like we should kind of like get in line. versus my experience as being a full-time CMO, where I have many times with the board of directors and with my CEO been at odds where I'm like, "Hey, I think we should do this." And they're like, "Well, I'm not sure. We should check with one of our advisors. Should we bring in a consultant? Should we ask an agency?" And it's like, it's backwards to me that like and you I'd be curious because I know over the years you've hired tons of agencies and consultants, and it's like it seems crazy to me that we get more leverage when we go into an organization than the people that are like, I'm all in and I've got equity and I'm like, I'm here for the long run.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and I hadn't thought of that initially when I first looked at this topic, but I do have thoughts on that. I think for me, when I've seen this happen where consultants come in and sort of seem to have like the sort of like the wand to be able to get things done, to make changes or at least propose changes that are off the wall or not sort of typical. I think there's this sense of security for people to say like, "Oh, well, if they're wrong, hey, it was just the consultant and we can fire them and end the project." And like, it gives you a little bit of protection, right? And I think in big companies, a lot of people like starve for safety,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And then on the other side, when I've hired consultants and agencies and things like that, I always am thinking like, "Hey, is there something that I can learn from you?" And I always ask when I'm interviewing, even, early ones is like, "What are you at the best in the world at?" Because
Yeah,
many people will say, "Oh, I'm good at this. I'm good at growth. I'm good
yeah,
at marketing. I'm good at like, no, no. What are you
yeah.
the best? Like, what is the best thing? Let's go start with that. And if we can
Superpower.
find value there, then maybe we can grow and expand." And it also gets you out of the case for me when I'm like, "Hey, I've got you in to go do this. You're the best in the world at that." And then when you're not crushing it at that, I'm like, well, if that's your best thing and that's your best at it and you're not crushing, I'm like, well, it's makes it really easy for me to let you go because it's not like I made a mistake. I'm like, I asked you, you told me what you were the best at. And so
Yeah,
it's really easy to cut the budget or let them go. But the
and
initials,
easier than an FTE probably.
way easier because
Yeah,
that then by definition,
yeah.
all good contracts, as we were told in due diligence, have an end date.
So you wanna talk about taking over a company or maybe first talk, chronologically, like when you came into either Microsoft or Instacart, like what was that experience like, and what have you learned from that that other founders who are like, "Man, I really wanna get acquired by one of these strategics or somebody," like, what should they know now?
Yeah, and I think the getting acquired thing is almost not or like what the process that I would take would be very similar to getting hired, right? Like the first thing you want to do is you have to admit there's going to be things you just don't know. Even if you were hired for a role and you were supposed to go fix this thing and it's broken and they bring you in for your expertise, there's definitely things you don't know. And so trying to figure out like the lay of the land is always kind of my first priority. And so the easiest way is literally just talk to everybody. And so in the old days, I would just book a lot of one-on-ones with like my team, my peers, like, people at the company, like, and then always ask the people when you're meeting with them, hey, who else should I meet? Cause like you'll start to find you're like, oh, that was a great conversation. They'll introduce you to others.
Mm.
I've changed that a little bit for when I like go into a company where I have like control, like I'm taking over a company, and I'll give it that in a second. But the main thing is you want to just learn what's going on, and you want to get like, you make your own judgment of some people will tell you all the truth, some people will tell you like a view of what they're trying to position or politically move for, and so but by having that sort of full 360-ish view of all the things you say, and maybe it's not 360, maybe it's like a 280 view. You're not getting 100% clarity everywhere, but that sort of data then informs like, okay. And then as you're hearing things, you're like, I definitely want to kill that or start that or do more of this or this was interesting. But again, the hardest thing is to reserve that judgment until you've actually heard all the
So hard.
pictures. You know,
But you're,
yeah,
like, almost doing a mental, like, framework, like, start, stop, continue exercise in your head as you're listening to all the things that are going
every
on, but, like, you're just, like,
yeah,
biting your tongue,
including the humans, like including the people you're meeting with. Like, should they be
yeah,
in the inner circle or the outer
or should
circle,
they be really out of the circle?
or they be like
Yeah.
exited, as
Well,
my friend
and
Elon would
is
say.
that timeline, like, is that 90 days? Like, the bigger the company is, the longer that you can, like, you have to wait before you can shake things up? Like, is
It's
there
funny,
some
you
math
always hear
there?
like these like first 90 days, first 100-day
Yeah.
things, and I mean, to me, you've gotta kinda get the first sprint of that done like the first week, right? Like, because the other thing, especially if you're coming into like a leadership position or something where you've been like, oh, you're brought in and a lot of people report to
Right.
you or they're expecting a lot out of you, people are making judgments on you in the first 10 minutes, right? Of seeing that note, reading it, hearing
Yeah.
about it, and then the rumor mill starts. And then from the moment you have that first meeting, everybody's checking, hey, what went on? What did they learn? And so you don't have a lot of time to
Mhm.
sort of collect raw-ish information before people start to form their own opinions. And so you want to be able to say, like at the end of your first week, hey, I talked to a pretty wide swath of people already. And here's my initial thoughts. And then the second week, you're like, hey, you're kind of clarifying that and moving through it. And then, I mean, so within the first month, you're like, week 3, you should be able to start making changes. And sometimes on week 0, you're making changes. Like
And
when I took over this,
and you're saying this universally, like, because that sounds fast to me, having been in some really big public companies, and you have too. Like week 3, you're changing and at what level in the org are you? You're a VP or like
yeah,
where do you sit where you're like, yeah, I'm now have the authority to do this and like my listening tour is over.
yeah. I mean, I would. Well, no, to be clear, the listening tour is never over.
Right. In fact, you
So
just
you're
said in
always
week 1,
listening.
have all your meetings so you like have as much knowledge as you have. And like I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but it feels like AI can help a lot here. And maybe when you talk about coming into the latest venture or the old venture, like how that's helped you accelerate that process.
Yeah, so I think AI helps. I think you can refine questions or things like that you've asked people and like and put your notes into a
Right.
doc or something. But I think the principle is the same. Is you have to have an opinion because and you have to have like some sort of way of capturing like what you want to do. I think the other thing that you should know up front, whether you're getting hired or acquired or you're taking over something, you buy like a company and take it over, is that what is the goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve
Right.
with this thing? What is your goal? What's the company's goal? What's the team's goal? What's the board member's goal? Whatever. And I think figuring that out is pretty important because you're weighing all of these things against that. And so, very quickly when you do sort of take a new team over, and I had a friend who went through they were a vendor for a large public company that went through a reorg. And so their project was getting reassigned. And what did that leader do was just paused all the projects and said, everything's paused. We're not doing any new budgets. So that was their move to sort of like pause time for the listening tour. And I think that's an okay strategy. And I think that's more common in really, really big organizations. But I also think that to me, like you don't want to break momentum on the good stuff. And so I'm much more in the mindset of like on week 3, I'm like, hey, I've heard a few things that a lot of people universally said we shouldn't do or we should do. Let's just try that. Because the other thing that I found is being in this sort of decision or listening to or paralysis for too long, people are like, oh, this person's never going to do anything. This guy's never making change.
Yeah.
Where on week 3, if you start making a couple changes,
They're like, oh, he
and
didn't even wait a month.
right. And people are like, hey, they all complained that there was no more chocolate milk and it was only like skim or no fat. And they're like,
It was
this
the
dude
smart
added,
waters at Google, but yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he brought chocolate milk back.
Yeah.
And
You're
there
the
was
guy
a
that brought chocolate milk back?
there was a company where that was one of the moves.
Because
And it was a
every
simple
engineer
thing.
was like, I missed that chocolate milk. We had that
It
control.
was a team, it was a remote office, and that office had changed vendors at some point in the last
No.
year. And then that vendor moved them from like, no fat milk to skim milk and chocolate milk just to like no fat and skim. And they're like, the chocolate milk has never been come back and they don't have it.
So you just, by way of kind of crazy circumstance and happenstance and life events, have come back into ownership and leadership of this asset that you've had for many years,
Yeah.
where you were involved, and now you're back and you're running it. So talk about that.
Yeah. So I think, so I mean, we can just say the company. So the company Search Engine Journal, it's a media website, marketers and publishers and
One of the OG, like first SEO blogs,
yeah,
basically.
23 years of SEO blogging.
Incredible.
Yeah. So the parent company is called Alpha Brand Media. And so I started with a few friends, many years ago. And what was crazy about it is, I hadn't touched the company in a while or hadn't really worked on it, obviously paid attention to it, but hadn't been in control. And so when I came back, the first thing was pretty simple. It was meet with everybody, right? And the team was enough where I could meet with the whole team. It's less than 30 people. And so I just set up one-on-ones and I said, hey, here's a calendar link, grab a time. And then answer these 5 questions. And it was really simple. And so the first question is, what do you do? What's your work behind your title? Like, what do you actually do on a typical week? Number 2, roadblocks. Like, what's the single biggest thing that's slowing you down? Process, tools, resources. Number 3 is like, one operational change. If you could make, what would that be? And then number 4 was, our favorite word. It's AI. Like, what are you doing with AI? What tools do you use? And what should we be doing more or less with?
Mm.
And then the 5th was opportunities. What's one thing that we're missing? Revenue opportunities, content gaps, competitive moves, et cetera. Right. And so it was like those 5 things. And so
It's a solid list.
it
doesn't
was a
feel like
quick
it's not
rip.
10 questions and it's not
But to
3.
me,
Like, it feels
each
like a
of
good,
those
yeah.
5 questions gave me something. But more importantly, the fact that I sent the meeting out with the link and some people booked right away and sent the questions back right away, like within an hour. Other people, a week went by and they still hadn't booked the meeting. And so then I had my admin reach out and like kind of, encourage them.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
If you don't want to answer it, don't. But
No, go ahead.
the people that waited the week, that didn't do the questions, that had to be chased, what percentage of those people still work there? You've been there like doing it like a month or so now.
Yeah, it's 50-50 probably.
And
It
of
was a
the
small
people
number.
that were within the hour, what percentage of them are still there?
100%.
But like that to me says everything. But we talk about this all the time. It's like, it's more than just grab a shovel. It's like, are you in the arena? Are you on
Yeah.
the team? Are you going with us? Like, oh, there's a new boss in town.
Yeah.
He's asking me to do something. Probably a good idea to do it.
Yeah.
I'm really
I
grateful I
mean,
haven't gotten the 5-question email from Kevin, like the calendar link, like, "Hey,
I
Jason, we should
just pulled up the thread.
Yeah.
I
Are
hadn't
you
seen this in a while.
gonna
It's
do
been
the
a
actual
it's been a
math now? You're, like, gonna count it?
No,
Just
no, I'm not.
you're pretty
But I just
certain on the
looked at
50/50
the
and the
t like
100%.
no, I'm a very certain on the 100%. I'm very certain on the 50/50. But I was just looking at the actual rough exact order of, like, who came and it's, like, almost a stacked rank of the quality of the team. Kinda crazy.
Wild.
And so to me, like that obviously like the ability to get back quickly, follow up on something. And look, some people are international, so I think there's like some, they were probably sleeping. So I
1
think there's
hour, like, you're asleep, but you plus the 8, right? Like, whatever it
yeah,
is.
yeah. By the time a week went by, everybody had seen it. You would have hoped. This was like back to the Elon Twitter thing. It's like, do you still work here? You like send them a Twitter. It's like, what did you do last week? And if they don't respond, you're like,
Yeah.
well, they're not even
What was the question? What did you accomplish this week, right? Yeah. Very specific wording.
pretty specific.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that to me informed a lot, right? It gave me an initial thing. And yeah, you can sort of put some AI to like some of the questions and answers, but then you actually meet with folks and learn. And so I think that was like the work and the people side of things. And that gave me a bunch of good information. And then interestingly, on the finance side, did something slightly controversial where it's like, we closed all the credit cards. So we shut off the ability for the company to spend money. And this is something I did pick up from the kind of the time at Twitter with Elon, is it making it very, and again, it wasn't that hard. It was just like, hey, we have a new bank. I started at Mercury Bank and said, here's a new card. Anybody that needs an expense card, just, send us a message or me, the finance person, a message, and we'll get you a new card and tell us how much you spend. And then what is it? And for 80% of the things, it was fine. Like, it was like, oh yeah, we're just going to change the card and put it in there. It's approval, buy our HubSpot, upgrade this account, the server, hosting, domains, whatever.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, 15-20% of the expenses just never came. Nobody even asked.
They didn't come back.
Nobody asked. It never came back. It wasn't clear
Some of
who
it was
owned
stuff
or
that wasn't being used. Some of it was stuff that wasn't
or
needed.
people had forgot about it, or they
Yep.
they were no longer prepared to defend it, so they didn't want to ask about it, whatever it was.
So, Kevin, I want to jump in on something you just said because, like, I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's a really smart financial controls approach, and so for founders that are listening that like want to be smarter with their cash and kind of how they manage it, I really suggest. So, Mercury is really cool because Kevin is using it, and you tell me if I get this wrong, but the cards, you have these virtual cards you can assign, so you can have specific vendors and expenses and like rules around, okay, you can't charge it again for 31 days. If somebody hits it before then, it declines. If they hit for above the amount that you've set is the monthly limit, it declines. And so suddenly you go from like kind of wild, wild west where like credit card just has a credit limit and people can just rip on it as much as they want to like, no, that subscription is $30 a month. And so $31 charge declines. Or like, no, that $30 should charge the next month. So if it tries to charge on day 25, it declines. That's pretty cool. And like, I think, something that I've not experienced with any other bank. So
yeah, I mean, Ramp has this, Brex has. I mean, there's other companies that have kind of these approaches. Like, definitely, you're not seeing this at Chase and
you're not
Wells
getting this
Fargo
as a
and like the
big four
traditional
bank. It's
banks.
a neobank, tech bank thing.
And I think the other thing that again, this approach, and again, you can implement this other ways, but like, is every card has an owner. Like, so I try to have like me and the finance person try not to own any subscriptions or cards. So you say that everybody there's got to be somebody in the
like
team
rolling
that's
back to the big cheese or the bookkeeper.
like head of marketing dash HubSpot, like their name.
Smart.
They have the HubSpot account, like, head of infra / hosting, they have the card for that. And so that way the card's tied to them. It's very clear, like, because there's always just been these cases, and whether it's diligence or just like thinking about things in finance and kind of like, hey, who's spending this? What's this? Like, how do we go? Let's do an audit of all our stuff. It's like, no, it's kind of automated, right? Like I just say, oh, there's too much spending in this department or this card. Like I can instantly trace it back, not only to the service, but to the human that sort of knows the most about it. It's the responsible for it.
So the last question for you on this, and then we should talk about the third topic and wrap up, is when you came into SCJ, how long did you wait to start making changes? I mean, this one, it was immediate. You had to switch banks, but like
it was a lot quicker. I had more progress. I mean, it's just first day. I mean, the banking thing happened on day 0. So like we started making some of the changes very quickly. But I think some of the bigger sort of strategy things took a week or two. We started to say, hey, we're going to do this.
3-week time horizon was not the case, not big company stuff. This is small organization.
Yeah. It was quick. Yeah,
nice.
It was quick. I mean, started like rebuilding some of the way we were approaching sales and thinking through that and helping out to like, hey, how do we accelerate things? So yeah, it was quick. And I think, and it's still ongoing. It's not, there's a lot more to do there, but it's also like a lot of opportunity and a lot of like ton of good ideas came from the team of like, they were like, oh, we should try these things. We've thought of these things. We haven't had time or the resources. And it's like, okay. And I mean, the high level thing is like, how do you use AI, bring back, some large percentage of the time and then use that time to go do other new things. And that's kind of been the routine. And it's worked pretty well.
So in my sleep deprived fugue state, I don't remember the third topic. So what is it, Kevin?
I got
Okay,
you.
thank you.
It's the no, it's say no.
Oh, this
It's
is
like,
the
how do you
hardest one.
build your say no
Yeah,
muscle? How do you prioritize things when stuff's on
yeah,
fire? And so it's kind of crazy because it's actually, to me, it's one approach, but two topics in one, which is one is just, hey, how do you say no in general? And then how do you prioritize when things on fire? Because there's times where like you get towards the end of the day or you're going to like rush out to a big international trip and you're like, I'm going to be offline for the next 12 hours. What are the things that I want to accomplish before I'm like pencils down, kind of machines off? And so that's I'll start. So I think so I think about that one a lot more, which is like, hey, I'm gonna like, kind of go to sleep for 8 hours. And I do this one at night a lot of times, right? Because it's like, and I look across, I basically live in two inboxes, right? I have like my Slack inboxes where a lot of real-time
yep,
stuff is, and I use later to flag
yep.
stuff. So I go through all my laters, and then and that one's been harder for me. I'm not as Slack. I don't naturally think of Slack as inbox zero, but I definitely think of email as inbox zero. And so email, I always go back and I'll skin my email and look across and say what's there. And then if I have time, I'll actually snooze or park things that I really can't get to today and snooze them to tomorrow to just be like, hey, it's actually getting to zero. So it's like clear and set some new deadlines. But a lot of times when I go and do that review in a more sort of holistic way, like on a weekend or something, like you're prepping for the week, the no hammer comes out a little harder where you're like, man, I've had this thing where I was going to go post this, new job. And then I'm like, oh, I haven't really posted it. It's been like 3 weeks. And I started the job description and my team wrote a bunch of stuff. And I'm just like, it's just not now. I don't have time to like, cause I keep thinking like, man, I haven't had time to like finish this job posting. And I'm like, if I haven't had time to finish it, I may not have time to like go do all the proper interviews and schedule it. And so I'm like, this is kind of a nice to have thing when I thought of it. And so I find myself saying no to things like that I, not only said yes to, but actually started to work on and kind of like in some cases assigned other people to
Yeah.
work on just because it's
Yeah,
time.
I find it really hard to even say no to some of my own ideas because it's like I've the thing I want to do, especially in the age of the third party harness. And it's like, oh, I've got my Perplexity computer, my Hermes agent, my Opal agent, whatever the thing is that I'm using as my little AI chief of staff. And like, I can just work on that all day long. But to your point, like you've got multiple businesses you're running and I do too. And people are, coming to you and saying, "Hey, can we do this? Can we do that? I have this idea. What about this? What about that?" And the inbox zero thing is real. Like I am OCD about it. I would say I'm even like I've been for the last few months. I've been really good about getting inbox zero every night on my email, and I've
Nice.
similarly. And this is not great with Slack. Got to inbox zero on the laters, but what I'm doing is I'm snoozing them to tomorrow. And I find myself with certain items that I do that too many times. I'm just like, nope, complete. I'm just never going to do it because it's clearly not important. And that becomes the forcing function, but it doesn't feel like the right framework. Like I think the founders that I see that are just crushing at this, they're
Yeah.
so good at gracefully and like very stealthily, like without hurting feelings or and I know you don't care about feelings, but like with just out make people feel good while saying no. Like I don't know how else to say that, but it's incredible
Yeah.
to watch somebody who's just like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. My daughter one time said I offered her some food at dinner. She was maybe 2 or 3 years old. She's like, that's not in my today. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. Like that, sorry, this is just not in my today. Can't do it.
Not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I just struggle with this. And it's something I always have to work on because I'm like a people pleaser and I like to make people feel
Yeah.
good and like do the right thing. And like sometimes I wish I was a little bit more ruthless.
Yeah, I think part of it's like, and I think there's, you mentioned this earlier in the show, like the idea of like when you have a kid, like your time and sleep changes, like you sort of like have to like, you're like, man, there's just a lot of like uncontrolled time when you have a small
Yeah.
child and you have to sort of make do with the rest of the time. So you sort of become better at ruthlessly prioritizing. And I think there's a
Very.
version of that that we can have, even now where you're like, hey, what can I do to like, mentally think about it? And I've used this framework. It's like some days it's like, well, I'm going to end work at this time and pretend I'm getting on, a 14-hour flight. Like, what would it look like to get my work state where I'm not worried about that for the next 14 hours, the next 2 days? Or, hey, I can go chill out and be like, things are covered. And if they're not, they'll be fine when I get there in 16 hours. Cause honestly, most things are. And it's more
But does
like,
founder mode ever shut off? That's like the 14-hour thing. Like even hearing you say it gives me like my skin crawls a little bit and I get a little bit of anxiety. Be like, oh, if I had to shut my phone off for 14 hours, I'm not sure I could.
yeah, no, I definitely have like addiction to internet and all that stuff and like want to not shut it off. I think the the thing is that, like, I think of it in two modes. Like, one is like, if I have my phone and I can snack on things that are coming in, like, like, hey, this thing, I can kind of like work on it a little bit.
Delicious.
Delicious, but it's not like there's like a project
Yeah.
or and the other thing that this is an interesting one because so Benioff runs Salesforce famously. It's been written about like from his iPhone, right? Like
Yeah.
at his
Well, he's in
level, he has
meetings
a lot of help
every single minute, yeah,
and he has some like body people with him that are like
on the laptop.
handling
Yeah.
things that have laptops and stuff, but there's still things that I do that are very very tricky to do on a phone.
Mm.
And that's the one thing I'm always trying to figure out a solve for. And in the past, it's always been like EAs or admins or team members to do that. And I think there's an opportunity, without talking about AI too much, that more of
Yeah.
those things, we can find ways to execute things only on the phone. And I think that's what I like talking to Claude Code and talking to OpenClaw type things and like being like, hey, did these things, they actually can have enough context to you can almost kind of delegate stuff to them or again, if it's a small enough and concrete enough stuff, then you can delegate more complex stuff than you could have delegated to
So maybe
ChatGPT.
the takeaway there is like you can start to say no to more things because now we have a little bit more leverage with the tools that can empower us to say, like, I don't want to do this, but maybe this thing can go do a lot of it for me. Yeah. Should we leave it there?
Or the time pressure of when you have to
Mm.
do it is because a lot of times it's like, man, if you can get back an 80% solution really quickly, that'll buy you time to go then do the rest of it in 3 days.
Feels like a good spot to leave it.
I like it.
All right, Kevin, we just did body, role, and time, the three things every founder pretends that they have under control.
Yeah, and I think the through line was kind of fun. Sleep as the base layer, the first 90 days as the role layer, and then say no muscle is how you actually protect the whole
Yeah,
thing.
the part that stuck with me was your week 3 framework. Everyone hears first 90 days and thinks they've got 3 months to sit around and listen. And you're basically saying by week 3, you better have an opinion and be making changes or people start writing you off.
And the listening tour never really ends. You just stop getting clean data the longer you wait to
Also,
act.
the thing that blew my mind on the SCJ takeover, the order your team replied to that 5-question email, almost perfectly stacked ranked to the kind of roster quality, setting aside time zone differences. That's a leadership hack kind of hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, I think it works, for certain situations. I think it'll be trickier at bigger orgs, but I do think there's a sort of a
All right,
yeah,
Kevin, what
exactly.
are your 5 key takeaways from the episode?
Yeah, sleep is the ultimate PED, performance enhancing drug. Week 3, not day 90. 5 questions, kind of stack rank your team. Every card needs a named human owner, right? And you think of like buying things, subscriptions, and then, sort of the 14-hour flight test, right? Can you really set things down and just be offline?
If this one hit, share it with a founder who's been running on 4 hours of sleep and a packed calendar. They need it more than you do.
And subscribe to Founder Mode if you haven't already. Leave us a review. It genuinely helps other founders find the show. That's it for today. Because the real founder flex isn't hustle, it's the discipline to sleep, listen, and say no.